Hey, what's up, friends? Welcome back to another edition here of Bleav in Big Ten. And if this weekend wasn't your evidence that you need to believe in the Big Ten, then I got nothing for you. After a 17-1 record, sorry, Minnesota, but a 17-1 record to open week one of the biggest conference in the biggest season of college football. What's up, everybody? Rhett Lewis back here with you. Excited to bring in, a good buddy and a pal here who does a great job covering Penn State. The great Tom Hannifan is here with us. Tom, appreciate you joining to talk some Nittany Lions. Appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time here. Man, Penn State got, one of the two biggest wins of the weekend. I think everybody's looking up at USC after that victory over LSU on Sunday night. But Penn State on the road in an absolutely hostile environment, Tom. Man, what a scene for college football and for this 2024 Nittany Lions team. Give me the 30,000-foot view of that one.
Honestly, it was interesting going into the weekend because the likes of Pat McAfee and everybody else were saying, oh, Penn State should be on upset alert. And frankly, Penn State fans weren't exactly sure what to expect going into this game. So much turnover during the offseason, 3 new coordinators, and especially everybody was looking at the offense. Andy Kotelnicki coming from Kansas, Kansas being in the top 20 in terms of explosive plays, Penn State being horrific when it comes to explosive plays. So what were we going to get? Are we going to see Drew Allar and Nick Singleton unlocked? And the answer was yes for that part. And then Andy Kotelnicki took essentially the same ingredients that have baked the Penn State cake for years under James Franklin, and he made something that was so much more fun to watch that I don't know how he really did it ultimately, but it was simplicity. I look back at a lot of the Oregon Chip Kelly offenses, and that's what it felt like. I think so many people expected a carbon copy of the 2-quarterback athletic quarterback system that he ran at Kansas. That's not really his MO. He takes what he's given. He accentuates strengths and protects weaknesses. It's kind of, it's really simple at the end of the day.
And that's the kind of in-depth analysis there that Tom and Justin King provide on the State of State, Penn State football show right here on the Bleav Network. And so, Tom, to dig in on that a little bit, let's start with Andy Kotelnicki and the blizzard, shall we? I mean, the blizzard was a beautiful analogy, one way or another. Creating the explosive plays, I think, is what ultimately rules the day here, just because of the recent lack of them in these Penn State offenses. And then everyone kind of wondering, well, was it this scheme? Was it Allar's skill set? What was the problem? Well, turns out, maybe it was just fit. And maybe Allar is just a better fit with what Kotelnicki is doing to provide opportunities for those explosive plays. Because we have 4 of over 40, which was half of their total from a year ago. Is that about right?
We were pretty surprised altogether as Penn State fans watching this game. And it wasn't the expectation that Penn State didn't have the personnel to do it. It's just it hadn't really been done very much. And I think everybody thinks the world of what Drew Allar can be is, people talking about he could be the number 1 overall pick or a top 5 pick if he goes out next year. Nick Singleton was recruited as the number 1 running back in America when he came to Penn State. We'd seen it, glimpses of it, but for some reason last year it had been masked. I don't think you can point everything at the former offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich, who had a very much heralded career. So it's kind of like, well, what exactly was wrong? And I think there were so many elements that were playing against Penn State. You had the wide receiver room was not terribly talented last year, and some would say that Keandre Lambert-Smith, now at Auburn, wanted to be the guy who was getting the, no pun intended, the lion's share of the offense. And I think you just have a very different feel altogether in that room. And now you have Trey Wallace standing out. You have Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen doing their thing as we expected. It just feels like there's a plan in place, as opposed to the feeling last year from Penn State fans of, well, just chuck it deep. And that's not the answer. That's not what Drew Allar is there to do. Drew Allar protected the football in a responsible way like he did last year, and he built on it.
Yeah. And it's, by the way, not necessarily the question if you ask James Franklin either, going back to one of last year's most viral moments in a James Franklin press conference.
I felt bad for that guy.
Yeah, I did too. So while we're on the topic of receivers, did you expect that type of game from Harrison Wallace III? The 5 catches, 117 yards, the explosiveness, the yak, all of it.
I don't know if I expected it, but it wasn't a surprise necessarily.
Yeah.
I think it was a big question mark coming into this season of which wide receiver was going to take that leap. Penn State believed Trey Wallace could have done it in 2023, but he was slowed down by some injuries. There's been a lot of discussion about Liam Clifford, the younger brother of Sean Clifford, having become a quote unquote playmaker during training camp. Unfortunately, didn't have a target in this game. And then everybody was talking about Julian Fleming, the transfer from Ohio State. He also did not have a target in this game. Listen,
How do we explain that?
When he stepped foot on campus, the word that we consistently heard out of the program was that, man, he's leader, veteran presence, high IQ, does everything they ask him to do, great attitude, all that stuff. But what are you not hearing in that discussion?
Playmaking, speed, athleticism,
big catches. Oh, and now you heard a little bit at the back end of camp. He's had a good camp. He's he's going to make the tough catches when we need him to make them, and he's where we need him to be. All that sort of stuff. My expectations for Julian Fleming, unfortunately, are very low. And you do have to think, again, we all look at the transfer portal as if the grass is going to be greener on the other side. Well, you went and got a number 3 wide receiver ultimately. And I don't even know if that's solidified based on how Omari Evans performed this past week.
Sure. I think that's fair to wonder as well. Okay, you touched on the run game a little bit. I wanted to double down on that here a little bit because Nick Singleton, clearly was the pizzazz in the run game here with the 114 yards, 13 attempts, right? I mean, very, very healthy average, while Kaytron Allen, didn't necessarily have the same type of success. Do you expect there to be a bit more of a, let's say, disparity in share of carries moving forward here?
You're still going to see that similar balance between both guys, almost a 50-50 split. But it really depends on opponent. If you look back at last season, there were certain games where Kaytron Allen was just having more success. His game is more in between the tackles. And my broadcast colleague, Justin King, has compared his running style to Frank Gore, who had a ton of success in the National Football League.
Sure.
Is that the sexiest thing you're going to see on film? Is it Chris Johnson? No, it's going to be efficient and productive. That's what he was last season. Nick Singleton has that pop and explosion to take the ball 80 yards, and he had that pop against West Virginia. It was kind of what we saw from Nick Singleton 2 years ago as a freshman at Auburn in that victory against the Tigers. So it's been nice to see them come around. And I think, again, coming back to Kotelnicki, under Yursich, the attempt was to try and get the ball to about 7 to 10 pass catchers a game. Now under Kotelnicki, you saw 5 different ball carriers for Penn State, and I think they can go even beyond that. Not just Drew Allar and backup quarterback Bo Perbula, but Cam Wallace, Quentin Martin Jr., even Corey Smith, depending on health and availability. They can go deeper in this running back room, which should scare some people.
And then just to kind of close the book on the offensive side of things, Tyler Warren, again, I kind of feel like he's going to end up being target number 2. He kind of was in this game. He ended up with 3 targets and caught all 3 of them. But I do think that he ends up being kind of that in the pecking order, right up there at the top, if we're calling Harrison Wallace the top dog there. And then on the offensive line front, I thought they held up pretty well. Didn't allow a sack in this game. I think you got to give credit to Drew Allar there too, especially with a lot of guys that you had to replace that went into the draft this past year. So was pretty impressed on that side of things. All right, on the defensive side of the ball, where you guys have a guy I am very familiar with, of course, being an Indiana Hoosier football alum and coming to know and love Tom Allen. I imagine there's some good folks there in Nittany Lion land that are pretty happy with that first overall impression of that Tom Allen defense, especially when you saw kind of the bend, but then don't break, force turnovers, 4th down stops right early on in that game before that weather delay.
It was fantastic. And listen, I'm so glad we have Tom Allen, and I'm so sorry that you lost Tom Allen. Here's the thing. Penn State fans are very fickle, and I will call them all out because the second Tom Allen was hired, you saw this movement on social media is that, well, he had a losing record at Indiana. And that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. If you pay attention to the way that Tom Allen coached his teams and especially his defenses, you knew that it was going to be a steady continuation from the Brent Pry era to the Manny Diaz era and now the Tom Allen era. James Franklin has done just an outstanding job getting defensive coordinators. Okay, so what did Tom Allen do against West Virginia? What's their strength? Running the football. They ran the ball 32 times for 2.5 yards per carry.
Take that.
It doesn't get much better than that. Then you put the whole game on Garrett Green, who is kind of like a Baker Mayfield light. Nothing against him. I actually think a tremendous amount of his ability, but that offense is get the ball out quickly. They applied pressure from the interior and through the edge. Not as much. We can get to Abdul Carter and deny Dennis Sutton, but they applied pressure. And basically, West Virginia had to live on chunk explosive plays in the passing game to even hope to move the ball consistently. Right. That's not an offensive game plan that's going to work. It's not sustainable. Tom Allen looked at a team dead in the eye and said, I'm going to take away your strength. And he did that in his first game. Hats off to him.
Yeah, no doubt. And man, watching this game early on, and then I had to go back and rewatch the second half because during the lightning delay, I had to go get ready for my game, which was the Oregon-Idaho game.
You could have watched almost an entire other football game while this football game was not being played. It was unbelievable.
Oh, nuts. Yeah, exactly. But the thing that I came away with, just so impressed on the TV copy because it jumped out to me, and then going back and watching it, I was like, all right, yeah, no, it stacks up. And, we'll get to the big name players, but Jalen Reed, I thought was all over the place in this game from that safety spot. And it reminded me of guys like Jamar Johnson, who ended up being a draft pick of the Denver Broncos playing safety spot at Indiana. Guys like Devin Monster Matthews as well, who Penn State fans probably remember as well. Guys like Bryant Fitzgerald, who Tom Allen's had, and almost, plus athleticism with Jalen Reed. Like that dude was everywhere in this game. What was your take on how he kind of impacted that defense?
He's in this hybrid role in that Penn State's playing a 3 safety look right now under Tom Allen. They did something similar last year with Manny Diaz, but you have Jalen Reed in this situation where sometimes he's a linebacker, sometimes he's a safety, sometimes he's a corner. So good luck to the quarterback figuring out what he's doing on that play. Jalen Reed was opened up to make a lot of different plays in that you saw how the interior, the defensive line, and the defensive ends were essentially trying to open things up along the offensive line. So Kobe King and Tony Rojas at linebacker could do their thing, but also so KJ Winston and Jalen Reed could fly in there basically as supplementary linebackers. They were doing an outstanding job in that game. And this is the real strength of this defense. So many people thought in the offseason, Kalen King, Daquan Hardy going to the NFL draft, Johnny Dixon would have not been for medical reasons. So a little top heavy in that respect, right?
Yeah.
Penn State's cornerback room reasonably can trot out 6 to 7 guys that could start virtually anywhere in America. And you've only kind of seen the beginning of that. By the way, there's 3 safeties that are outstanding. Reed is very, very good. KJ Winston's a guy who's maybe going to be a day 1 pick at some point in his life. It's just crazy. There's so much depth, as my broadcast colleague Justin King has coined it, lockdown U, the defensive back room for Penn State.
Like it.
Jalen Reed, the monster. He's just getting warmed up. I'd compare him to Jaquan Brisker a little bit.
It's a great one. And look, and for folks, that are familiar with, watching Tom Allen's defense, I would liken what Jalen Reed was doing to like what Noah Pierre did recently in the Husky role for Tom Allen at Indiana, where, you're going to see, like in this game, he spent, 24 snaps in the slot as kind of a quote unquote slot corner, but still just a little bit outside of a box defender, right there in the mix if you need him. And then he was in the box for about the other half of his snaps on the field. So yeah, and he's a player who is skilled and varied in his skill that you can move in a lot of different ways. So I thought Tom Allen did a great job deploying Jalen Reed in that entire kind of secondary group on that front. And then, Dennis Sutton, I thought, held up very well. Abdul Carter was an interesting one to me in this one because I think we all kind of talked about, all right, not playing that, kind of traditional middle backer role in this defense, kind of in that bull position role as kind of like a pseudo defensive end outside linebacker. He didn't move around that much. I mean, that was kind of the talk. Like maybe he's going to be in a Micah Parsons type role. We'll move him in, move him out. I think you kind of want to get a guy comfortable in one spot before you really start putting all that on his plate. He did end up having a sack in this game. I thought it was interesting. And actually, the one sack actually comes when he's off the right side of the offense, right down by the goal line, right in the fourth quarter. So I'll be curious to see if we do see a little bit more, at least side to side switching there. But I thought overall there's still some work to be done on that front with Carter.
Yeah, there's work to be done, and I'm encouraged because it's the first game of the year. You're not going to face another power opponent until you have Illinois on September 28th. No
Yeah.
disrespect to Bowling Green and Kent State. So you get Bowling Green on the 7th. You get a bye week. Then you get Kent State on the 21st. You don't leave Happy Valley until October 11th to face USC the next day in Los Angeles. So you got some time, which is great. And I'm always of the mind, you don't need to show all your cards in week 1, nor do you need to show all your cards through September. So this gives Abdul Carter time to acclimate from switching positions. Is it the consensus of the coaching staff it's more natural for him? Sure. Now, mind you, against West Virginia, their left tackle, number 74, could be an All-American this year. Credit to him. So is that an adjustment Tom Allen makes of, hey, let's maybe swap him so he's going opposite the right tackle? Is denied Dennis Sutton a better matchup for that guy? Again, week to week, what's going to win? What's the 1-0 approach?
Yeah, no doubt. And look, this is, Illinois is going to be a tough out. We'll see what happens with UCLA. They were in a real tight one against Hawaii here. So, I think look, Penn State should be 5-0. It should be 5-0 going into a pretty tough stretch there in October into November. You do get the bye week, one of the bye weeks kind of mixed in there, right? With USC, Wisconsin, and then Ohio State in consecutive games, not consecutive weeks. How does that stretch ultimately tell the story of this season, right? Is that part of the early narrative here?
I'm very glad there's a bye week in between USC and Wisconsin, because if you had to do that travel, both away games, I think that would cause you some real trouble. Listen, once you get to USC and on, it's antennas up for just about every game. And that's no disrespect to Illinois and UCLA. I think Illinois is going to present a challenge in and of itself. Penn State has struggled in the past with the interior run defense. They look better, certainly, as a stats I just mentioned against West Virginia. Brett Bielema brings a challenge no matter who he's got. And that defensive line Illinois presents is very talented as well. So Penn State's got inexperienced tackles. Is that going to be an issue? Drew Allar under pressure historically has not been good. So there's some time to get acclimated based on what we said from saw from USC. As you pointed out, the LSU game was, I think, eye-opening, and that did LSU let them off the hook? Yeah, but Miller Moss and company hung in there offensively. And when it's Lincoln Riley, are they going to go fast pace? Are they going to go no huddle? Is that something that's going to be a problem for Penn State defensively? In my opinion, once you get to USC and on, nothing is a given. And honestly, like if you allow things to snowball, you could be in a situation where you just work yourself out of the college football playoff. And it's going to take time.
And let's keep that theme going here briefly, Tom, and certainly appreciate your time here with us. But Big Ten versus SEC has been a common theme for this podcast here over the course of the last couple of months, especially as we explored what this new conference this first season with these new realignments really look like. 17-1 for the Big Ten, 3 losses though for the SEC on their 16-team league, and in some marquee games. Obviously Texas A&M going down to Notre Dame, LSU going down to USC is most notable. The lone blemish, as I mentioned, Minnesota for the Big Ten losing to UNC, which was a tight game. Where do you stand on the opening salvo? I mean, is it a clear check mark in the Big Ten column right now?
I think it's clear just based on the win-loss record. Again, it's super early in the season, so I really don't get hung up on that stuff. I think the SEC will prove to be much more top-heavy this year, and Penn State and company will be in a much deeper Big Ten altogether. And it's still this weird world where there are plenty of people that think Georgia and or Ohio State are the best teams in college football. So on the Big Ten side of things, is it Oregon? Is it Penn State? Is it Wisconsin? Is it Iowa? I know people give Iowa a lot of flack, but I mean, is it USC? There's six plausible teams that could work their way into the Big Ten title game, and then how do the dominoes fall from there? So I just think there's more depth overall in the Big Ten, and especially hats off to these teams coming from the Pac-12, because there's pressure on them to perform now that they're under a new brand, so to speak. I think right now the SEC brand is doing a lot more heavy lifting than the players are on the field. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and to quote Dylan Gabriel, you got to go out there and play every week. The Oregon quarterback saying the logo ain't going to save you. And that's
I love that.
Put it on the quote board, baby. That's where, although you could make the argument that they need to focus in on that a little bit more, because the logo.
Idaho. That would have been rough. I looked up at that score at halftime. I was like, this must be NCAA 25 or something like that. And the simulation just happens to be on my screen.
Yeah, exactly right. And so Oregon is the one team that Penn State won't see, right, from the new West Coast expansion. You see UCLA beginning of October, USC right after that, and then, of course, Washington into November. Jury's still out on Oregon. I was there at that game in person in Autzen, and it was there was anxiety-producing moments for sure on that Oregon sideline with Idaho hanging tough. But I got confidence in Dan Lanning, phenomenal coach, to figure things out moving forward. And they got a tough test this week with Boise coming in. But next up for Penn State, got to keep the train rolling against Bowling Green, right? Keep the antennas up, and imagine James Franklin will have that team focused and ready to go. But Tom, we sure do appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time. Everybody out there listening, go check out Tom on State of State, a great Penn State football podcast here on the Bleav Network. Tom, great fun, man. Look forward to doing it again here real soon.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.